Guys, have you ever made a huge mistake while thinking with your PP? My friend and I have always been attracted to each other and decided to become friends with benefits. She had a preference for bananas that had the snip, however my PP had a hood. She said she had unpleasant experiences with previous partners who did not have the snip and was disgusted when one of her previous partners had PP cheese. Even though I guaranteed her that I thoroughly washed my PP as frequently as possible, she was still uncomfortable with the thought of sleeping with another unsnipped partner because she was worried that her past experience might lead to her getting the ick when she saw my uncut PP, regardless if it was clean or not. My friend asked if I ever considered the snip. I said I never considered it because I was happy with it the way it was. My friend apologized for being turned off by an uncut PP and suggested that we brainstorm ways to work around it somehow. After the first week of only going down on her, we agreed we needed an alternative. So a few weeks ago, I decided to get the snip. I wanted to go all the way with my friend, and I was willing to allow a complete stranger to literally chop off parts of my PP to accomplish that. My friend was over the moon when she heard I was getting the snip. After the procedure, I was advised to avoid all intimate activity that involved my now snipped PP for a period of 4 weeks. My friend and I obviously had to pause our plan to sleep together during that time. As of today, it's been 2 weeks and 2 days since my circumcision, and the plan my friend and I had to hook up is no longer on pause. It's dead. Done. Not happening. Less than a week after my snip, my friend met the perfect guy apparently. He's an optometrist, and I think he might have helped her see that sleeping with him was a much better option than sleeping with me. My friend has downplayed the connection between the two of them. But going into the 3rd week of my recovery, it's become clear to me that my friend has hearts in her eyes for the eye doctor. Found out I've been dating my father for almost 4 months, so I've never met my dad. He ran off when my mom found out she was pregnant with me. My brother was only 8 months old at the time, so he also has no memory of him. There are no pictures of him anywhere, and my mom hates talking about him. All I know is that he was emotionally hurtful to her and a real jark. I, 25 male, have a thing for older men. Call it daddy issues or a beddish or whatever you want, but I pretty much only date or make love with men 40 and up. My family doesn't know this or that I'm gay for that matter. It wouldn't be an issue, they just never ask. We don't really share personal things like that. About 6 months ago, I met David at a club. We hit it off great. He's in great shape for his age, supposedly 43, although that's a lie. He's actually 47 as I've found out. Really attractive, charming, etc. He left for a 2-week work trip a few days after we met, but we kept messaging each other and I really liked him, which is rare for me. We went on a date after he came back and have pretty much been dating ever since. He has a lot of money and I'm kind of his sugar baby, but that's not the reason I was attracted to him. Definitely A+. Though I didn't tell anyone we were dating except for 2 of my best friends. He also never met any of my friends or family and I never met his. This changed last night. We were at a restaurant when out of the corner of my eye I spotted my mom. I don't live at home and we only usually text if we need something. So I didn't know she'd be there, and to be honest, I still don't know why she was. She hates going out and thinks it's a waste of money. She had not seen us yet, but David noticed me looking at her. I'll forever remember the way his face changed when he saw her. His expression went from his casual, charming smile he always had to this blank, panicked look. I obviously noticed and got a really bad feeling. So I asked him what's wrong and he just got up and excused himself. I kept asking him where he was going and grabbed him so he couldn't just leave. At this point I was really confused and suspicious, but I would have never guessed what would happen next. I don't think anything could ever prepare me for it. At some point while he was getting up, my mother must have spotted us because next thing I know she's next to our table, asking me what was going on. I couldn't really pinpoint her facial expression because it looked like she was horrified, but again, at this point I didn't know David was my father, and she doesn't know I'm gay. David is visibly uncomfortable and looks like he wants to unalive. He was literally sweating. I assumed this was because he didn't want my mother to know I was dating someone of his age. I was about to try to explain what was going on to my mom when she said, "Why would you go behind my back like this?" I was so confused because again, I didn't know he was my dad, so like what was she going on about? She probably assumed I had looked for and met up with my father without talking to her about it, despite her telling us how badly he treated her. To me, however, it seemed like she was acting crazy for no reason. I kind of took it personally and thought she was trying to tell me who to date and what to do. So I casually told her that I was just on a date with my boyfriend and I tried to grab David's hand, but he just jumped up and ran away. My brother framed me of rope 8 years ago. But the truth has finally been revealed. My brother Henry was always the golden child in the family. Growing up, he could do no wrong. High school ended and I didn't complain much, but I felt I had to move out and explore things on my own as well. For the next few years, I went to college in a different city, and in 5 years got my MBA. I managed to land a job back in my home city. During this time, my contact with the family was minimal except for the birthdays and visiting them during the holidays. My brother was never the brightest of the bunch, since he barely managed to get through high school. He dropped out of college and my parents helped him set up a small shop dealing in hardware so he could get off his feet. I was happy for him, but I had my own life. I also had a girlfriend, Jenny, who I met in college and was from the same city. When we returned back home, we moved in together. She was also able to find a job soon enough, and we started to focus on our lives and each other. It was during the holidays of 2006 when I introduced my family to her. They were surprisingly warm and receptive towards her, and also made me feel more love than I'd experienced in the past 22 years of my life. I noticed my brother was looking at her during that entire gathering but thought nothing of it. Since then, he started frequenting my apartment a bit too often. We went from meeting each other once in 3 months to almost daily very quickly. At that point I had to draw boundaries and tell him that he's welcome occasionally, but I did not like his presence in my place daily as he came during the evening when Jenny and I were both at home and tried to unwind after a hectic day from work. That erupted into a huge fight with my parents. In the end, he apologized and said that he would not bother me. Then onwards, he used to come only once a month on a weekend, which I was okay with, and made attempts to make small talk with Jenna, which was still fine by me as it never was anything beyond that. Things went on this way for some time, and in 2009 I proposed to her, and we announced our engagement to the entire family. My parents were happy for me, but my brother just shook my hand and left the small party I'd organized for this occasion. After that, I didn't see him for a couple of weeks. My brother framed me of rope 8 years ago, but the truth has finally been revealed. We got married in 2010, during which I noted my brother had a +1 named Kate, and he told us that he was dating her. I thought maybe now he could finally move past whatever feelings he had for Jenny and focus on his own life. They moved real fast too, getting married almost 9 months later in 2011. Our marriage was going great. We had our first daughter Alice in 2011, and the second one Sarah in 2013. However, my brother's marriage did not progress as they hoped to, and they separated in 2012. A few weeks after the divorce was finalized, Kate messaged me that Henry was obsessed with Jenny and that was the biggest reason for their separation. I apologized to her and wished her the best. I also talked to Jenny and asked her about her interactions with Kate, and she told me that Kate always was a bit cold and distant towards her from the get-go. I decided to confront my brother in front of my family and asked him why is he destroying his life because of his obsession with my wife. He was blindsided with that question and denied everything. We had a massive argument that basically ended with me forgiving my brother and telling him that he is no longer welcome in my house. Both my parents and Jenny talked to me and convinced me that no matter what, he was still family. So for everyone's sake, I decided to be amicable. It was then that it felt like he was genuinely working on himself, and we went on with our lives. Fast forward to 2015, I can still recall that day vividly. It was the 25th of July and I was running multiple errands. My wife took both our kids to see their grandparents. It was sometime after lunch that I got a call from my father, telling me to come to their home and had a lot of anger in his tone. As soon as I entered, I noticed a lot of tension in the air. My wife was a crying mess and my parents were trying to console her. Some of my extended family members were there as well. I asked what happened only to be hit by being called a rapist by my parents. I was shocked and confused. They claimed that a party I went to a couple of weeks back, I had decided to rope a girl and then texted her to not tell anyone about it, otherwise there will be consequences. I had known this girl Amanda for some time. We went to high school together and she was a part of the larger friends group that I occasionally hung out with. My brother framed me of rope 8 years ago, but the truth has finally been revealed. As per her, after the party, which was at a club, I followed her to her car and did it there. She shared screenshots of the alleged conversation with my wife and told her this entire tale. My father slapped me hard and my parents told me that they never want to see my face again. Jenny was angry and she said that we're done. I tried to convince all of them that I never did that but fell on deaf ears. I was basically kicked out from their house and told that neither Jenny nor the kids would be returning, and my father would be coming over to take their stuff to my apartment. When my father came, I begged and pleaded, but he basically packed a couple of bags and told me never ever to contact them again, and that he would personally hand me to the cops if that happened. By evening, Henry had shared the screenshots and all the details to our extended family group on WhatsApp, from where I was unanimously kicked out. The next few days, I even had people from my friend group calling me to say they were disgusted with me and never to contact them again. I was a mess during that time. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't even properly work. My boss also heard the rumors going around but couldn't do much until he saw some police action against me. He advised me that I leave the organization on my own to keep my record intact, and that he would ensure that I don't have to even serve my notice period. I tried to argue the case, but he told me that if the cops come knocking on my door, he would be kicked out anyways. And in such a scenario, and the gravity of the case meant I won't get severance and my record will be tarnished. I grudgingly agreed to his ask, and I left the organization in the next few days. In mid-August, while I was still wallowing in my misery, I received 2 documents from the court. One was a letter of disownment, and the other were divorce papers. I was quite intoxicated, but I went to my parents' place anyway, only for my brother to come and lay hands on me and tell me that I was a disgrace to the family, and it was good that I was disowned. I had blood coming out of my face by the time he was done with me and barely able to stand. My parents and my wife looked at me from afar but did nothing. I managed to get myself up after some time, a crying mess, and realized that I had lost everything and everyone I knew. I stayed holed up in my apartment for the duration of the divorce. It went as amicably as it could. As I was jobless, plus my now ex-parents stated they would pay for the child, I didn't have to pay child support or any alimony. By January 2016, I was divorced, but trying to pick up the pieces that was once my life was hard. During this time, I also felt like confronting Amanda, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it could have made matters worse for me due to the women-centric laws, and my country meant one phone call and I would be looking at 5, 6 years in jail. My sister told all my friends I'm a V-card, so I told our family her actual body count. My sister is a big hypocrite. She likes to preach about feminism and how ridiculous it is that women are shamed for their sexuality while men aren't, and she refuses to acknowledge that guys too can be hurt by stereotypes around sexuality. In particular, we've argued over how it's often a subject of mockery when a man is a V-card, whereas women are praised for it. However, my sister has always said that a man should be able to tolerate purity culture a little bit since women have to live with it, and that this double standard doesn't matter. I agree that women shouldn't be critiqued any differently than men for their behavior, but I think that goes both ways, and that overall everyone should just keep their intimate relationships to themselves. For reference, I'm a little conservative, I guess. My girlfriend of 3 years and I have never been intimate, as we're both saving ourselves for marriage. But during a conversation about purity culture at a party when everyone was a little drunk, my sister shut down my entire argument by saying that she was tired of arguing about sexuality with a V-card and that I needed to shut up. The thing is, me being a V-card and even my faith was something I kept private. My friends were shocked to hear the truth and immediately started laughing at me. I tried to shout at my sister, telling her she was being hypocritical for using my own sexuality, or lack thereof, as a weapon when she's constantly preaching about how ridiculous it is that the same thing happens to women. But she basically said, "Oh yeah? Well, what are you going to do about it?" I guess she forgot that the 2 of us were going to a family function the following week. After carefully plotting my revenge, I decided that I was going to reveal her body count to our family and give her the exact same treatment she had given me. What is the absolute worst thing you have ever caught your dad doing? I was walking towards the kitchen when I noticed that my dad's door was open. I quickly peeked inside and saw him sitting at his computer. Now I had just woken up and was pretty hungry, so I would have just kept moving, but then he clicked and all of a sudden the entire computer screen was taken up by a picture of a woman's thighs. I focused my vision and realized that the background of the photo was the weather from the news. My dad was looking at the weather lady's thighs. He closed that image and then opened another. Same thing, but it was a different weather lady. This time he had to zoom in on her thighs. I watched him do this multiple times. Most of the pictures were already cropped to just show the thighs, but all the women I could see were Latina. And these were some thick thighs. Now normally you might think that this isn't that bad, but the issue is that my mom doesn't have legs. She was in a bad car accident a few years ago and had lost her legs as a result. She is now in a wheelchair, and my dad had been nothing but a perfect and supportive husband, at least from what I could see. Up until now. In fact, the reason my mom was out of the house was for her PT. I was pretty sure that my mom didn't know about my dad's obsession with thick Latina weather lady thighs, as he was doing this while she was out of the house like he was hiding it. Anyways, I moved on towards the kitchen to make breakfast, still in shock over what I had seen. I had no idea what I was going to do kitchen to make breakfast, still in shock over what I had seen. I had no idea what I was going to do. Later that night, while my parents were out for a dinner date, I went in and investigated my dad's computer. I knew his passcode, but I also knew that he wouldn't just have the pictures on his computer in an obvious place. The first thing I did was check his search history. My dad, being of an older generation, hadn't conditioned himself to use incognito tabs when he was doing his dirty browsing. I immediately found searches for thick thighs and Latina weather lady thighs. I started laughing a bit to myself and then found this website that he had visited. It was really weird, like this whole community for people with the same obsession as my dad. He was even sort of active in the chats on the website. There were like unlimited pictures on this website. They all had download links on them. I mistook a woman for a young boy and inappropriately touched her. Her reaction still shocks me to this day. I've been working for the TSA for a few years now. It's not a glamorous gig, but it pays the bills, comes with some decent benefits. And when I'm up for it, there's overtime. It was a week before Christmas. Terrible weather threw a wrench in the works, and flight delays were the talk of the town. I decided to play the good guy, volunteering to cover a late shift so my coworkers could head home to their loved ones. Besides, it was mostly just standing around waiting for the occasional late traveler. As I stood there manning the 8-tube, I spotted a trio of passengers approaching, a middle-aged man, a middle-aged woman, and a teenage boy. Naturally, I assumed they were a family heading off for some holiday trip. Mom breezed through the scanner, no problem. Dad followed through, all good. Then it was the kid's turn. "Hi there," I said with a friendly smile. "Just step into the scanner, please." I gave him a once-over, hoodie, sweatpants, short hair, and a smooth face. I assumed he was around 13 or 14 years old. After he walked through the scanner, I noticed an anomaly on the screen in the chest area, so I informed him that I had to perform a pat-down. He seemed a tad nervous, but I figured that was normal for a young guy getting his first security check. He agreed, and I proceeded. As my hand touched the left side of his chest, I felt something very unexpected. I moved my hand around, squeezing it as I examined it. I was confused. It was oddly fleshy, which threw me off. He didn't look chubby or anything. At this point, I was on high alert. I took a step back and gave him a grim stare. "Sir, I need you to remove the sweatshirt." He looked at me confused, but followed my orders. As he removed the hoodie, my heart sank. This person was wearing a sports bra and had some decent-sized melons. Everything clicked. This wasn't a teenage boy, this was an adult woman. I turned around, wanting to die from embarrassment. The middle-aged man and woman were gone. This girl wasn't with the couple I just scanned. My eyes widened and I looked at her face, now flushed a deep shade of red. "I'm so sorry," I stammered. I called my supervisor. She hurried over and I quickly explained the mix-up. She clapped a hand over her mouth and I braced myself for a furious reaction. But to my shock, she was holding back laughter. After a moment, she composed herself and told me to take a break. She took over and finished screening the passenger. Once everything was sorted, I sheepishly apologized. She said it was okay and that she'd been mistaken for a boy before. She also mentioned that she should have clarified things before I touched her. Relieved, I left her alone and checked in with my manager, preparing for the worst. To my surprise, she reassured me that it was an honest mistake and that she'd back me up if the passenger filed a complaint. But she didn't think that was likely, so I shouldn't worry. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I ruined her Christmas and felt like a complete jark. I finished my shift, then headed to the airport to grab some much-needed food. As I searched for a late-night snack, I noticed the woman I'd accidentally grabbed sitting at her gate. Her flight had been delayed until the next morning. I approached her again to apologize and saw that she was stranded for the night with all the nearby hotels booked solid. "I'm really sorry about earlier," I said. "I feel terrible. I'm about to grab some dinner and I'd like to make it up to you. Can I buy you a meal?" She hesitated for a moment, then agreed, and we found a restaurant that was still open. As we ate, she shared stories of being mistaken for a boy, and I told her about my own gender-bending experiences during my long-haired, beardless college days. We laughed and chatted for hours until I had to head home. I apologized once more for my blunder, and she said all was forgiven if I promised to take her on a proper date when she returned. I happily agreed, got her number, and we texted nonstop until her flight finally took off. When she landed, I picked her up at the airport and took her on the date I'd promised. Today we celebrated our 1-year anniversary. I lost my banana in an accident. Since then, my intimacy life has been the best in the world. I am 30, am a passionate motorcyclist. Unfortunately, I am also a very high-spirited person and misjudged my abilities on a short ride, which caused me to crash into the crash barrier and strategically land unfavorably. Long story short, I amputated my PP at the crash barrier. Maybe shouldn't have worn jeans. The doctor sewed it back on, but the leftover piece lay in the sun for too long, and that's why it caught an infection and was removed again. Which left me with 2 inches to pee in my balls. It took me almost 6 months to come to terms with the fact that I no longer have a PP. Depression, alcohol abuse, one or the other drug. Full program. A friend of mine, Shelley, then really folded me up. She said that women are not necessarily only about the PP, and that if I managed to compensate, nothing should stand in the way of a fulfilling intimacy life. I have to say that I was quite a womanizer before my accident. I just love women. No matter how big, small, thick, thin, women are wonderful. And when they give you attention and feel good about you, it's almost like intimate magic. I don't want to brag, but I've always been honest. I have always said clearly that I am not looking for a relationship, and a one-night stand is all I can give them. This was sometimes better, and sometimes worse, but the collateral damage was always limited. Well, after what my friend said, I asked her for help. We've been friends for 15 years, and we've been through every imaginable ups and downs together. I trust her blindly, and I hope she sees it that way too. She really made me a better person and man. Often pointed out to me when I've fallen into this toxic masculine trap my father taught me. I'm a racist because we don't have sriracha sauce. I gotta write up for that. I work in a small diner. We mainly sell fries, steak, and simple salads. Our customers are mostly employees from the surrounding office buildings. Every lunchtime is a big run as people buy their lunch from us. Unfortunately, my colleague had an accident, so I served the SNR alone. All customers were very patient and no one rushed me, and all were very understanding. It's Captain Spicy's turn. Captain Spicy has been coming to our diner every day for a week and always orders a well-done steak with salad. He always wants the whole thing cut and placed directly on the salad. He is also the reason why I put chili paste from the Asian market next to the sauces, because he likes it very much. Captain Spicy ordered his usual and asked me if we had sriracha sauce. I said no and apologized, giving him his order, wishing him a nice day and serving another customer. Less than 2 hours later, I was about to close the diner when my boss called and asked me why a customer complained that I was a racist. I told him I didn't understand the question. He then told me that a customer called him and complained that I didn't want to give him sriracha sauce because he was obviously Mexican. I was really beyond confused. I told him that today, a single man had asked for sriracha, and he was black, and because of him, we had already bought chili paste from an Asia shop with our own money to make him happy. My boss said that I would get a write-up for this, and that there would be consequences if he received such a complaint again. I am baffled. What did I do wrong? My husband likes Asians. I'm not Asian. He wants to buy a woman in Taiwan and move her in as his girlfriend. I, F. 26, and my husband John, M. 30, have been married for 3 years. I knew from the start that he had an Asian fetish, anime, manga, hentai. All things that make him very happy. I don't think it's a bad thing. I also have my hobbies, but a few weeks ago he shocked me. I had a busy day and came home tired. The apartment looked terrible, and I asked him to help me clean it. That's when he started suggesting that I had a busy day and came home tired. The apartment looked terrible, and I asked him to help me clean it. That's when he started suggesting that we hire a maid. In fact, I wasn't averse to it. The next day it got even weirder. He suggested that we open the marriage. I was absolutely horrified. I didn't understand how he went from being a cleaner to an open marriage. Of course, it turned into a fight. I went to my mother, who I told everything. She was equally horrified, but suggested I think about it and ask him why he wanted that. That's what I did. The next evening, I asked him why he wanted to open the marriage. He told me straight out that he didn't find me sexually attractive. He found a woman from Taiwan on the internet who was very much in love with him. He would like to bring her to us, so she starts as a maid and becomes his girlfriend. He had to buy her from her family, which is why he wanted to take out a loan. I had never felt so repulsed and angry. I tried not to let it show and asked him how he imagined it to happen. He then explained his plan to me. She should apply for a visa as an au pair and move in with us. We would pay her for the language course and a minimal salary, and he would then be in a relationship with her. I couldn't believe what I just heard. I just got up, grabbed a bag and went back to my mother. I told her everything he had said. She is absolutely on my side and said I can stay as long as I think is necessary. Now I'm wondering if maybe I'm too narrow-minded. My brother is going to marry a racist. Am I the a-hole if I don't go to the wedding? My wife Camilla is Mexican. We have been married for 6 years. My little brother Oliver, M30, is getting married soon. His fiancée Hannah is one of the most disgusting people I have ever met in my life. She is an open Trump supporter, which is not a bad thing. Everyone is entitled to an opinion. She is also very verbal when it comes to her political views. My wife was born in the States, as were her parents. She has American citizenship, as do her parents. She got a good job in marketing and went to college, so she falls absolutely outside of the cliché that the Republicans have subscribed to. However, Hannah can't help but keep making jokes when we're visiting. When she finally asked if Camilla had applied for American citizenship now that we'd been married for so long, I'd had enough. I gave Hannah my peace of mind, and my brother started yelling at me to stop being so disrespectful to his wife-to-be that she couldn't help me marrying a bean-eater. That was the end of the conversation for me. Me and Camilla left the house and drove home. We had a few days of radio silence before my brother asked me if I would come to try on the suit. I am his best man. I told him that I didn't want anything to do with him and his kind, and that he has to find a new best man. Me and my wife will not attend the wedding, and he should not expect me to come to any other family celebrations. He then started calling me countless times. Finally, my mother called and said I can't do this to him. After all, Oliver doesn't have any friends. I described the situation to her. Mom said that she could understand my point, but that it was an important event for my brother. I told her in no uncertain terms that I don't care and have no intention of participating. Now the other family members are calling me too, and they all say that I was ruining his day. Maybe I'm just too emotional? Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for walking out of the airport when I saw my husband's mom standing there with her luggage? I, 30 female, don't have the best relationship with my husband's mom. Since day one, she tried to make remarks and compare me to her. She then tried to get on my good side and started overly praising everything I do, and sometimes even copying me, like that one time when she literally dyed her hair purple just like mine. And when everyone pointed out how ridiculous she looked, she actually blamed me and accused me of trying to make a joke out of her. So my husband and I took 2 weeks off work to go visit some places out of the country for our anniversary. The thing is, I was the one who saved up for and arranged for the trip. My husband was responsible for booking the tickets and hotel. My husband's mom wanted to come along and threw temper tantrums when I said no. It was meant for our anniversary. It doesn't make any sense why she should be included. She called, texted, sent people to talk me into letting her come, and even threatened to call the police and make some complaint up to get us to stay if she can't come. My husband got so fed up and said we should just take her, but I told him he was wrong to tell her about the trip in the first place. He gave me an ultimatum, said he wouldn't go if she can't come, and I told him I'd gladly call his bluff, which made him take his words back and say, fine. I will tell her to stop it because we won't take her. Things got quieter, suspiciously quieter. The day of the trip came and we got to the airport at 2 p.m. My husband was walking ahead of me and was looking left and right like he was looking for someone. I asked him, but he didn't respond. He led me to the waiting area, and the first thing I saw was his mom standing there with her luggage. I froze in my spot. I felt a cold wave washing over me, and I was fuming inside. She and my husband were hugging. That's when I quietly turned around and started walking towards the exit. My husband followed me while shouting at me to stop. He tried to stop me, but I told him off in the harshest way possible. He tried to say I was overreacting and that his mom was there anyway, and I should let it go and not mess the trip up for us. I told him he and his mom could still go and that I was going home. I went home and sobbed into my dog's fur for a good hour. Turned out he booked her a ticket without me knowing. They still went on the trip without me. A few hours later, after they landed, he called me yelling and raging about how pathetic and spiteful I was to walk out and go home and ruin the trip last minute. I told him he caused this to happen. He said that I was being so hard on his mom that it was ridiculous. I refused to fight anymore, but he kept on berating me, and then called my family to tell them that the anniversary trip was ruined and that it was because of me. My family said that I shouldn't have ruined it for myself, and should have sucked it up and done my best to enjoy it. Did I really overreact? What is something that makes you the most happy? My sister introduced me to a friend of hers who is also divorced, and she and I hit it off. We've been seeing each other since last summer, and while we've agreed that neither of us wants to get married again, we are together. Once my ex heard about this, she once again tried to contact me, but I ignored her. My son also got married and didn't invite his mother. She again contacted me to try to get me to intervene on her behalf. I told her I would talk to him, but I never did. Secretly, I feel like she deserves all the pain she's feeling when it comes to our kids. She destroyed our family without so much as an afterthought. Too bad. So sad. Now she recently told our daughter that she finally broke it off with a dream man because she could take his drinking and total lack of responsibility. He wasted her half of the $401k that I had to give her. He also totaled her car driving drunk, this from a man in his 40s. Again, she knew this guy for 3 months and torpedoed our whole family for him. On the face of it, I act like I feel sorry for her, but inside, I really delight in the fact that she's so unhappy. Call me evil or whatever, I don't care. She brought this on herself, and it serves her right. I actually had to sit there one Saturday night while she got ready for a date with this guy and laughed on the phone with her friend about how awkward our living situation was. I lived in hell for over a year because of her. Wait until she finds out our son and his wife are going to have a baby later this year. Maybe if she had been able to keep her legs closed, she'd get to meet her grandchild. Enjoy your shabby one-bedroom apartment and your broken-down used car. Me and my new partner will think of you when we're on vacation in Hawaii this summer. Hawaii was the trip my ex and I always planned to take once our daughter finished college. Maybe I'll send her pictures. What is something that makes you the most happy? I'm so happy that my ex-wife is miserable. Found out my wife was having an affair. She met a guy at work and came home one day telling me she was in love with him, no longer loved me, and wanted a divorce. This was a guy she'd only known for 3 months. At the time, she and I had been together since we were in our 20s. We have 3 kids. Well, I tried to fight for my marriage and didn't want a divorce, but she simply would not stop seeing this guy. After one weekend where she disappeared from Friday afternoon to Sunday night, I ended up throwing her out of the house. She immediately moved in with this guy. The only excuse she ever gave me was, "I never wanted to hurt you, but there's just something about this guy, and I deserve to be happy." That was it. That was the depth of her reasoning for throwing everything we built together away. We ended up finalizing our divorce in early 2022. Although I had very hard feelings toward her, I faked it enough to get pretty favorable divorce terms from her. It seemed she was so eager to be with her dream man that she didn't have time for a long divorce. So in the end, I got to keep my pension in the house, which I had bought from my grandmother. I did have to give her half of my 401k, however. The effect on our kids was pretty devastating. All 3 of them took it very hard. My oldest son told her that if she chose this man, he'd never have a relationship with her again. As of right now, neither of our sons has a relationship with their mother. Our daughter does talk to her from time to time, but their relationship is very strained to say the least. My daughter is a very kind person and she tries, but she usually ends her conversations with her mother even more upset than when they started. About 4 months after the divorce, my ex contacted me out of the blue. She told me she had made a terrible mistake and asked if she could come home. He dream man turned out to be an alcoholic who she says is verbally abusive and wasted all of her money. I used this opportunity to tell her exactly what I thought of her as a person, a wife and a mother. I told her this was her life now and to deal with it. I told her she no longer had a home at this house and to never contact me again. Then a few things happened over the last year that have driven her to start trying to contact me again. First off, I met someone. I got blowed by my best friend, and I don't think his wife knows. Hi, I 23 at the time got blown by my best friend 22. We were drinking to celebrate me getting a new apartment. To do this, we got drunk, as we have for years. Well, this night I got blackout drunk and could barely walk. We went to some railroad tracks near my place walking back. I dropped the rest of our bottle, had to climb the stairs as I could barely stand. We get to my empty living room. I grab a pillow and fall asleep for a minute. When I wake up, my friend is pulling my pants down. He then says I have a nice banana and blows me. I pass out again because I don't really remember it. After that, the next thing I remember is me and him fighting, and I'm trying to call someone and he keeps asking why and keeps trying to grab my phone, and I keep pushing him away. I black out again and then wake up in the bedroom in completely different clothes. The next day I told him I don't remember anything and asked what happened, and he said nothing, that I just went to bed. The next day I was going to see a girl I was dating at the time, however I wanted to throw up. I felt so dirty and wanted my parts to fall off. The anxiety was overwhelming. She noticed, but I just said it was a hangover. I told myself it didn't happen. I immediately stopped drinking with this friend and didn't see him for 2 years. Then one day he tells me he's getting married, however didn't invite me or another mutual friend to his wedding. But we all did meet before the wedding to meet his wife. Seeing him still gave me very bad anxiety, and I really don't think his wife knows. Am I the a-hole for uninviting my family to my wedding after they feminized my fiancé? I, 24M, am getting married to my fiancé J, 23M. My mother's family is very traditional and religious and always believed I would be marrying a girl and are having a hard time adjusting. Jay is a model. He oftentimes he'll model clothes on the more feminine side and no one has a problem with it. My family have seen some of the photos and have often joked that Jay is pretty enough to be a girl, which he would just laugh off as some joke. My grandfather has offered to pay for the suits. The deal was he would get an opinion when it came to what our wedding suits would be since they were paying. Jay and I went on different days. Fast forward, I'm going to go pick up the suits from my aunt's place. Right away I can tell something's wrong. My suit is fine, but Jay's is white. Jay was adamant saying he wanted a black suit, so I asked my aunt why it was white, but she said Jay chose it. I didn't believe her. Something was definitely off. Jay isn't a large guy or anything, but this suit just looked far too small. I asked Jay about the suit when I get home and he just brushes it off. When I said it looked too small, he looked a bit panicked and said he'll take care of it. I couldn't help but feel maybe Jay was pressured into choosing white. He's a bit of a people pleaser, so it wouldn't surprise me. I ended up looking up the suit online to see if I could order one in black, and if he liked it, we could refund my grandfather. As it turns out, they ordered a woman's suit for him. I honestly thought it was a mistake at first and that maybe my grandfather somehow chose wrong. So I asked Jay about it when he got home and he broke down. Apparently my grandfather told Jay that every wedding needs someone in the bride role, and since he's marrying into our family, it should be him. My aunt had been pressuring Jay into losing weight to fit into the suit they bought for him, and had convinced him their family would only accept him if he wore a white bridal one. That's not even all. My grandaunt has been buying Jay a lot of hair accessories that are extremely feminine, and has even suggested he get a new engagement ring. I've never been so upset. Jay said he didn't tell me about any of this because he just wanted to keep the peace, and that just made me more upset. I ended up uninviting them to our wedding. My mom called and demanded to know what happened and said she was deeply shocked and ashamed when I told her everything. She said it's not acceptable, but that they're having a hard time adjusting to this new kind of wedding. My cousins say if a suit was such a big deal, then Jay should just wear a dress since he's used to wearing girl clothes. I uninvited them too. Jay's family are all on my side. My mom says that I was overreacting by uninviting everyone that disagrees with me and that I should let them come if they apologize to Jay. I'll admit I was harsh, but I also don't think I'm in the wrong. Mom claims that Grandma kidnapped me. She probably never thought that the tide would turn for her. My mother is the worst, always has been. She is constantly looking for guys who are more than abusive. Together with them, she makes life difficult for me and my brothers. We get hit, yelled at, insulted. She regularly steals money from us when Grandma gives us something. In front of the school, she presents herself as the best mother in the world. I had gone to stay with my gran for the weekend because I couldn't take it home. I had several tests coming up in the next week and wanted to study in peace. I hadn't told Mom what I was going to do. Otherwise, she wouldn't let me go to Granny's. The two had a very bad relationship. In fact, Mom didn't call me looking for me, which I'm sure she knew I wasn't in the house. Saturday night, there's a knock on the door of Grandma's house, and the police are there. Grandma opens the door. The cops say they have a child kidnapping report and they're looking for me. You have to know I was 16 at the time. Grandma opens the door. The cops say they have a child kidnapping report and they're looking for me. You have to know I was 16 at the time. I came to the door and the police wanted to take me away, so I saw my chance. I told them that I wasn't kidnapped but escaped, and showed them the black mark on my rib from kicking my mother's boyfriend. Grandma hadn't seen the bruise either but managed to look blank. I told the police that my brothers were being beaten by her and her partner, and I was there to consider what I could do. The police let me stay with Grandma. The two men hadn't said anything else either. Hours later, CPS was at the door with my brothers. The clerk said that the two really wanted to go to Grandma. In fact, we got permission to stay with her during the trial. Mom and her boyfriend were arrested. In fact, the cops caught her in the act while she was showering one of my brothers with hot water. They also arrested her guy. It turned out during the trial that her current boyfriend had molested my brothers. During the trial, I heard things that had happened to you that broke my heart. We're still living with Grandma, and I hope Mom and her boyfriend go to jail, even though I'm ashamed of it. I left my wife because I'm sick of everything needing to match her aesthetic. I know it seems like a dumb thing to end my marriage over, but after dealing with this for so long, I'm finally done. My wife and I are both in our 30s. We have a daughter. My wife has always been pretty into appearances, but it was never that bad. She just wanted things to look nice when people came over and for special occasions and holidays, which I fully supported. I helped her purchase decorations and put them up. When our daughter was born, she designed the baby room herself, and I executed the whole thing for her, painted the walls, installed lights, new closet. It was her hobby, and I thought it was nice to live in a nice house too. But it all changed when she started an Instagram page for moms, and got a massive amount of followers, about 400,000 since our daughter was born. Ever since then, I feel like I don't live in a house. I live in an Instagram photo shoot. There can't be any proof we actually live here. My wife stresses so much about things looking good that she doesn't actually enjoy the moment. She started a fight with me right after our daughter took her first steps. Because in the video, I had put my drink down on the table behind her, and it was all she could see, and how she'd need to edit it out of the video. She called me a selfish prick for putting my drink down on a coffee table to watch my daughter take her first steps. Our daughter's bedroom is just a massive beige and cream. There are barely any toys in it, which was fine while our daughter was small, but now she's getting older. My wife refuses to buy her any toys that don't match her aesthetic, which is basically any toy my daughter likes. My mother took my daughter to the store and let her pick out a toy. She picked out this really nice pink dollhouse from this show she watches. She got all of the dolls and furniture. And my wife told her she had to keep it at my mother's house because there was no place for it at home. We absolutely had room and space for it. She just didn't want the pink since it didn't match. My wife is convinced I'm leaving for another woman and I'm having an affair, since my reason is bullshit. But I'm not. This is all my true feeling. I just can't keep feeling like I'm trapped in a museum where I can't touch or move anything. I can't even build a blanket fort with my kid without my wife flipping out that they're decorative blankets that she had folded a special way. No matter who gets the kid, I'm putting a clause in the custody agreement that bans photos of my daughter on social media. I'm not going to force my daughter to be a tool for her aesthetic. My wife caught me jerking off to VR adult videos of her sister. This happened an hour ago, and I'm still shaking in fear about how my life will now become from now on. There are two situations that led to this. First situation, asked sister-in-law to borrow her 360 pocket camera for a trip wife. And I are soon vacationing too. Found out the memory card still had content. Her husband travels a lot and she made a 1-hour POV-style 360 adult video for him. I've had the hots for her for the past 9 years before she got married. And there were several times sexual tensions arose between the two of us living together for a year as strictly roommates, movies, dinners, getting drunk while watching movies. Just the two of us, breakfasts, all that. A certain trust was implemented and nothing ever happened between the two of us, as at the time I was dating my now wife who was working at a distance. But damn it, at the time, if she just had touched my hand once back then, I think I would have lived a whole different life. So finding this video, I thought I struck gold. I could have what I've always fantasized about, gifting my past self, while living my current happy life. Second accident, my wife and I have an app that is useful for tracking each other using notifications. I get a notification when she's at work, and when I arrive at work we also both get notifications when one arrives home. Last night she fell asleep without charging her phone, so her phone was dead, but I didn't know that. I thought I would get a notification when my wife got back, so since I have the day off today was the day I do the deed. I don't only go with simple 360 video, I set it up on my VR headset in bed with AirPods on. I needed to get the whole experience, you know. This would have lasted me tops 5 minutes, but the foreplay she does is long and boring. When the action finally starts and I'm going at it, my wife came back. She comes to the bedroom to see me touching myself in bed with VR goggles on. She knows I do it occasionally but never saw me do it. I sneak it in here and there. We never discussed if looking at VR adult videos counts as cheating, so I never knew if it was right or wrong for me to do so. I assumed it was okay, but I guess I was wrong. Since she rushed in and ripped the goggles from my face, that's when I see her in the room. "The flick are you doing?" she says. Then she looks inside. "Is that my sister?" I'm flicked. The one day I overslept saved my life. I was in 3rd grade. One day I was awoken by my mom in a rush. She had overslept, and since she always woke me up in the morning, this meant that I too overslept. And now there was just no way I was going to be ready for school early enough to get on the school bus. School started at 8 a.m. and my bus pickup time was 7 a.m., but it was already like 6:40 or something, and I was still in my pajamas and hadn't even had breakfast yet. So Mom decided that today we would just tell the bus driver to go on ahead and she would take me to school, which would give me plenty of time to get ready. So I'm sitting there at the dining room table eating breakfast, still in my pajamas, and it's now about 6:50. We hear the bus pull up about 10 minutes earlier than usual. My mom peeks her head out of the door into the foggy morning and waves the bus on. She closes the door and comes back inside, but the bus doesn't pull away. There's a knock at the door and Mom opens it to find a man in a bus driver's uniform. He explains that he's a substitute driver because the regular driver called in sick. He says he knows he's a few minutes early since he wanted to get an early start on the route since he didn't know it well. Mom explained to him that she was going to take me to school since we woke up late. He gets visibly upset and says that he can wait a few minutes since he's already running ahead of schedule. My mom insists that no, I won't be ready to go in a few minutes and tells him to go on ahead. He seemed angry about this and yelled at Mom for a few sentences along the line of her not trusting him and that I should wake up on time, but eventually turned around and got back in the bus and left. Mom thought it was odd, but just assumed that the guy had never done bus driving before. I returned to eating my breakfast and still don't have my school clothes on at this point. But at 7 a.m. sharp, another bus pulls up to my house. Mom thinks this is really weird and goes outside to talk to them. She comes back inside looking terrified but doesn't really say anything about it and tells me to finish getting ready for school. At the time, I didn't know what happened, but Mom ended up telling me a few years later. When she went to the second bus, she found that it was being driven by my regular bus driver, and it was full of all the other kids that are usually on the route. The other bus was empty. Mom asks the driver about the substitute driver and about him calling in sick. I never called in sick. There is no substitute driver on my route, he says. The driver immediately called dispatch in a panic and told my mom to go inside and call the police and report this incident. There was absolutely no one doing my driver's route that day. Whoever this was most likely a kidnapper who had targeted me. I never heard anything about it again, not even if someone else had ended up being picked up by this mysterious fake bus driver. But chances are, had I gotten on that bus, I would have never made it to school or back home. And if Mom hadn't overslept on that specific day, I would have been on that bus. I put lean in the church water supply and this happened. For context, I am not really religious and my mom forced me to help out with the church to one-up some neighborhood mom whom she hates. Their rivalry goes back to high school when my mom stole her boyfriend, who later became my dad. Anyway, my mom wants me working at the church to show how much of a good mother she is by having her son work for the J-man himself. Me and the big guy upstairs don't really see eye to eye, not these days anyway. One day I was super bored, so I concocted some lean using a tutorial I found on TikTok. It was then I came up with a hilarious idea to sneak lean into the church holy water supply because church is boring and I wanted to do something to make it interesting. When I arrived at the church before Mass, I snuck into the back to find the holy blood of Christ. I asked the J-man for forgiveness for what I was about to do right as I poured all the lean into the canister. At Mass, I tried to conceal my laughter as everyone who tasted the wine looked disgusted as they did it. I think the priest had some too, but he wasn't right at the Mass. At the end, he was supposed to baptize this little baby, and to his credit, he was able to do so quite convincingly. At the end, though, when he raised the baby up for everyone to see, he dropped the baby to the cold granite floor. Everyone gasped as the baby's cries filled the church halls. The priest himself started stumbling, and it was then that I began to wonder how much of the blood of Christ this guy had beforehand. The Mass ended without anyone putting two and two together, and I went to sleep that night feeling proud of myself. I definitely have to try that again sometime soon. I think my father is attracted to my girlfriend. My girlfriend, 21 female, and I, 25 male, have been dating for over a year now. We have a very healthy and happy relationship, and I've never been happier in my life. Recently, I've taken her to meet my parents. My parents are fairly wealthy and live in the suburbs, while my girlfriend and I live in an apartment in the city. I wouldn't say I'm wealthy, but I work as an attorney, so I make good money. We visited my parents' house around a week ago, and my father wouldn't stop staring at my girlfriend. He asked her some questions like, "Where do you work? How tall are you?" And things seemed mostly normal. He started complimenting her, but I didn't think much of it since my girlfriend is very attractive. He told her you have great childbearing hips and that he'd want to see her pregnant with my child. My girlfriend looked visibly uncomfortable and my dad started saying even weirder things, so we just excused ourselves from the dinner table. She told me she was tired and wanted to go home. I told my parents we were going to leave and my dad looked angry. I took my girlfriend and drove back to our apartment. The next day my dad called and said he wanted to talk to me. It was the weekend and my girlfriend was working her shift, so I drove back up to my parents' house. My dad sat me down outside and told me how sexy my girlfriend was and that I was lucky to have her. He mentioned how he wanted me to get her pregnant and said it's like her body was made for it. I obviously got angry and told him he shouldn't say things like that about her, and marriage wasn't even on our roster right now, let alone starting a family. He told me it was about time I had a child and mentioned my older sister who had her son at 20. He said my girlfriend had the perfect figure and genetics to help carry on our family name, and that he's proud of me as his only son. This is when I got angry and stormed off. Should I confront my dad about his dated views? My wife's affair just ended and she wants to play it off as nothing happened. My wife and I have been together for 12 years and married for 8. For about 6 months, my wife has been very distant and very protective of her phone. In hindsight, I probably should have seen this red flag. Her escapes were, I'm going to Target to return something, but then she wouldn't come home for 3 or 4 hours. I'd ask her why and she'd always say she was just looking through the store with her Starbucks. So I didn't think much of it. Possible red flag too. This is where it really jumped on my radar when I realized she did this every Saturday afternoon. Plus she never came back with a Starbucks cup, and when I checked the account it didn't show any charges. So one day I asked if I made her happy. She giggled and said yes in a sarcastic way and rolled her eyes. I have to say, watching that hurt, especially when she used to immediately say yes, making eye contact and giving me a kiss. So what I did next made me feel bad, but I bought an AirTag and placed it in the lining of her purse. I only did this because when I confronted her about her Saturday afternoon trip, she got very defensive about it, saying she deserves time to herself, which I agree, but then said Chris likes seeing her. I was like, who is Chris? My wife said he works at the Starbucks. Anyway, one Saturday after she left to go to Target, I was watching her location and she did go to Target for about 10 minutes. Then she left and went to an apartment building. That's when I got in my car and went to that location. I went to the front office to see if I could get access to the apartment and told them the story. Turns out Chris has always been a jerk to the front office and they were more than happy to help. They lead me to the apartment and let me in. I could hear noises coming from the bedroom with the door cracked open a bit. I took out my phone and from the cracked open door recorded about 30 seconds of them doing the deed. I left and drove home in shock. I couldn't believe she'd do this to me. I know I'm not the easiest guy to get along with. I'm a Marine Corps veteran and I've been diagnosed with PTSD and a TBI. For years I've been doing therapy and trying like hell to be the husband she deserved. This whole thing shattered me to the core. When my wife came home later, I was in a mood, so I completely shut down. Usually she asks what she can do to help me, but this time she just said, "Another mood, huh? Oh well, I'm going to shower." I was like that until Monday when I could see a lawyer, showed my lawyer everything I had and that I wanted a divorce. He said he'd write up the paperwork and have it for me in like a week. Well, that turned into 3 because he had gotten sick and wasn't able to work. No biggie. But during those 3 weeks of waiting for the papers, my wife went back to her normal ways. Only thing I could come up with was the affair ended, but I wasn't sure. After 3 weeks, I get the papers and gave them to her. She was shocked and asked why I wanted a divorce. I showed her the video and she was in shock at first, then angered that I'd follow her and record that. She explained it meant nothing and everything's back to normal since he ended it. A part of me still loves her still, but the other part is destroyed, and the 30 seconds video is burned into my brain. She suggested marriage counseling, but I don't know what to do. It hurts to think about my situation and I needed an outlet. So I came here to vent, and I guess if anyone reads this, if they have some advice or anything. Ex-wife and I slept together. Hey guys, long post, but the details are important. My ex, 47 female, and I, 45 male, have been divorced for 3 years and have 2 sons, Wyatt and Jack. Our split was mainly due to our kids and the different parenting styles. My ex is a genius. She's a PhD and a research scientist while I'm an analyst. She grew up with colder parents who instilled strict routine and discipline to be successful, while I grew up with a very close relationship to my parents who encouraged forming my own path in life. These two backgrounds came head to head when it came to our own kids, especially when they started school. My ex wanted them completely focused on academics, while I wanted them to live a little and let them enjoy being kids and have them figure things out on their own a little. After months of fighting, we decided that it wasn't going to work. Our split was amicable, and she actually paid way more child support than she had to but insisted on it. We even spend Christmas and birthdays all together for the sake of our kids. Our sons primarily live with me by their own choice, and while my ex does see them about once a week, my kids are teenagers now, and sometimes they want the weekends to themselves. My older one, Wyatt, has said to me that sometimes he feels like it's my ex's own fault because of how hard she was on them. I try to remind them that she's still their mother and she was doing what she believed was best, and at the very least he owes her respect. This brings us to a few days ago, since both kids are on break. My ex tries to stop by on the weekdays to try and see them more. She stopped by, but both kids were out with friends for the evening. She had come all the way, so I invited her in for a drink. We were just chatting, and eventually we started looking at old baby photos of our kids. We had a lot of laughs until we got to one picture. It was a picture of when my sons were 6 and 2, and I had them both up on each shoulder, and the three of us were laughing. My ex just started sobbing out of nowhere and started apologizing to me for everything. I was really confused, but I hugged her and told her that she only did what she thought was best and that she shouldn't apologize for trying to be an involved parent. Ex-wife and I slept together. We stayed there for a while, but neither of us wanted to let go. Eventually she looked up at me and her look reminded me of when we were dating. We started kissing and things escalated. It was like the 12 years of our marriage came flooding back, and during my ex kept tearing up and telling me she loved me. She quickly left before our kids could come back, and we've been silent until today. I got a text from my ex asking if we could meet up alone to talk. What the flick do I do here, guys? On one end, both my ex and I still care each other, but on the other, this whole thing could be a huge shock to not only our kids, but the rest of our families as well. Update. Hi everyone. I know it's been a little bit, but I have an update to my last post. First of all, thank you to everyone. Your guys gave some great advice and really helped me prepare for the conversation with my ex. I met up with my ex 2 days after getting the text from her. I went over to her apartment and we had a great talk. About a year after the divorce, my ex actually went to see a therapist to sort of get an understanding of where her life was, as she kept going and discussing things from her childhood. She realized she was doing the same things to our kids that her parents did to her, things that ultimately made her resent her parents, which was why she was actually closer to my mom than her own. She teared up a bit and told me she never stopped loving me, and that regardless of what a document says, I would always be her husband. My ex admitted that on the night the incident happened, she knew the boys would be out and she wanted to spend some time with me alone. When we started looking at old pictures, she got overwhelmed. She told me how much she missed me and would do anything it took to make it up and at the very least be partners again. I told her that I always cared about her and that I missed her too, and that I still felt something for her. At the end of the evening, we both came to terms that we still loved each other and would give it another shot. The terms were that we take it slow and regularly attend couple counseling, as well as to not to tell the kids yet. Since then, we have been spending almost every day together, and we actually had our first counseling session. It went pretty well. Even after everything that happened, and my ex and I were really able to establish the grounds of our new old relationship. We are going to be going to more sessions, but it's a good start. I actually hosted a family dinner a couple nights ago. While our boys still don't know about us, I made the excuse that it would be good for the four of us to have a meal together, and honestly, my wife really has changed. She was more open with the kids and was more interested in hearing about things like sports, hanging out with friends, and hobbies. My kids responded really well, and for the first time in a while, our sons were enthusiastically engaging and connecting with their mom. She also planned a trip to the zoo for the four of us like we used to do when the boys were young. I think my older one got a little suspicious and rolled with it, but the fact that we have co-parented so well has been a great cover. Things are good now, and I think deep down neither of us truly fell out of love, and I think we would have eventually found our way back to each other regardless of what happened that night. Thank you guys again for all your kind words and support. What's a secret you'll never tell your partner but are willing to tell strangers on the internet? I never paid for her engagement ring. I went to a custom jeweler to have her ring made. It's a beautiful piece and she loves it dearly, and it certainly wasn't cheap, appraised and insured for around $10,000. The jeweler was dealing with a lot of family issues at the time and was incredibly disorganized. I went to pick up the ring and brought my checkbook to pay for it, and when she handed me the ring, I took it out and asked her who to make the check out to. She said, "Oh no, don't worry about it right now, just send me a check in the mail." I thought that was strange, but sure, okay. She then hurried off to help another customer and I left. But she never told me what the final price was. For the next 6 months I texted and called the jeweler asking, "Hey, just tell me what amount to put and I'll mail you the check." And there was always a reason she couldn't tell me. "Oh, sorry, I'm out right now, I'll find it and text you later." Her shop was a few hours away from where I live, so it wasn't feasible to stop by and handle it in person. I tried for 6 months, but after that I stopped calling and texting and just figured I got the ring for free. I wouldn't tell my spouse because I don't want her to think I took advantage of the situation, or that somehow the ring isn't as meaningful because I didn't pay for it.